You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
One more episode of the Show Before the Show podcast before the trade deadline. We are at crunch time on the trade hot take calendar. Get pumped. We got takes galore coming up for you.
Yeah, just go to any type of message board ever. Message board still exists? I say that.
I think it's just Twitter now. I think it's just everybody yelling on Twitter.
Right, that's true. Just the amount of trade rumors that other team or fans of other teams want to make. There's like, yeah, we have all these spare parts. Definitely teams will want these for their number 2 starting pitcher, right? That's how that works. It's like, oh, dude. And it's always a dude. No, dude, that's not like you have to. It has to hurt on both sides.
Why doesn't my favorite team trade these bad players for this other team's good players?
Good player. Yeah.
Why wouldn't we just do that? Seems like a smart plan. That's the thought process of every baseball fan going. Which if the world worked that way, it'd be a good thought process. I guess
it would be. This is a topic we can say for another day too. But I feel like there are fewer and fewer lopsided trades anymore.
Yeah. That does seem to be the case, which also seems to lend itself to very few win-win trades and just a lot more like lose-lose to mediocre trades. I feel like we see so many of those. Every once in a while, you'll get a trade where it's just like, wow, that worked out great for both sides. But a lot of times, it's just like, oh, really, nothing came out of that on either end. Okay, sure. Makes sense. It's not an easy thing to do. Trades are not easy to execute.
Yeah, no, they're not. And trying to figure out, especially with rentals now, I feel like that's a big thing, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But trying to justify trading a prospect who could be under team control for 5-6 years, whatever, for 2 months of a major leaguer. How do you balance that? How do you kind of figure that? It feels like the market's kind of settling in on how that all works, but it was a rocky road there for a while, and I think we've kind of locked into it now.
And with that, we'll talk about some of it coming up here in just a moment. It's episode number 170 of the Show Before the Show podcast from MILB.com. My name is Tyler Mon. Sam Dykstra is in New York City, and we're talking all things minor league baseball as we approach the July 31st Major League Baseball trade deadline, which has already gotten a lot of moves up and on legs and underway, and some already completed. And it's going to be an interesting next 6 days. We're recording this on the 25th, so we'll keep you updated at MILB.com of all of the goings-on of trade deadline time. Sam's got some Toolshed stuff up already, looking back on the 2017 deadline and what systems could be most reshaped in 2018, and we've already got a couple of those so far, and we will dive into those here momentarily. But thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Show Before the Show, wherever you found us at MILB.com/podcast or on Apple Podcasts or Google Play or anywhere else. Give us a rating and a review and a subscription, and get in touch with the show if you would like. Podcast at MILB.com is where you can find us, and send us your questions, your thoughts, your comments, your concerns, your queries about what your team is doing at the trade deadline if you don't understand, because a lot of times the plan is not very clear based on what teams do at the trade deadline, because it's all part of a larger picture, and sometimes you'll look back 5 years later and go, oh, okay, I kind of get what the point of that trade was, and maybe we'll see some of those over the next week, but for now, we've already got some big ones to talk about, and we're going to dive in with Strike One this week to talk about the biggest one, which, of course, Sam and I talked last Wednesday on the day of, was it Wednesday or Thursday? I already forgot now. You doing it on Wednesday last week?
When did we come out last week?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
It was the All-Star break, Major League Baseball. The All-Star game was on Tuesday, so it was Wednesday, because we recorded and we were not able to talk about the Manny Machado from Baltimore to Los Angeles trade, and we discussed how undoubtedly the trade would become official within the hours of when we recorded to when the show was posted, and we recorded and it was official like 90 minutes later. So that trade done, and even though it's now 6-7 days old, we have to talk about it. Manny Machado moves over to the Los Angeles Dodgers, where he plays shortstop for like 3 days, and then Justin Turner gets hurt, and now he has to move over to third base. But that team, obviously, at the major league level, kind of gets itself back to where you thought the Dodgers were going to be at the beginning of the season before they lost Corey Seager, and now they've replaced an all-world everything shortstop with another all-world everything left side of the infield guy, Manny Machado. But we're not so much interested in that deal. What we are interested in is the deal that goes the other way. As part of that trade, a 5-prospect package goes from the Los Angeles Dodgers to the Baltimore Orioles, headlined by Yusniel Diaz. This deal, Sam, you kind of knew the Orioles were going to have to hit big and get a sizable and solid chunk of prospects back. However, you're trading away a rental, so you're not going to have the same leverage as maybe if you would have traded Manny Machado over the offseason. But it seems like the Orioles came back with a pretty good haul. Just how much does this reshape that system? How much better is that system now after the trade?
Yeah, so let's combine that also with the trade that happened, thankfully, before this podcast recorded, which was the Zach Britton trade that went down Tuesday night. Zach Britton goes to the Yankees, coming back to the Baltimore Orioles. Dylan Tate, Cody Carroll, and Josh Rogers. Dylan Tate now the number 4 prospect in that Orioles system. Cody Carroll is number 15. So this was a Orioles system that had a lot of risk to it, didn't have tremendous upside. I mean, last year we looked at it. Austin Hayes was a breakout star for them last year, climbing all the way to the majors at the end of the year. He's dealt with injuries this year, wasn't really good at AA Bowie before that. Ryan Mountcastle is looking more and more like an established slugger. He's 21 right now. He was at the Futures game. He's up at AA Bowie right now, hitting .316 with 11 homers, putting together some solid numbers there. But, this was a system that was pretty bereft of pitching. You could say what you will about Hunter Harvey and how he has really good upside and a high ceiling, but at the same time, he's really struggled to stay healthy. He's only thrown 32 1/3 innings this season. This system needed more arms. And it kind of got that in the Britton trade. I thought maybe, with the trade with the Dodgers, they were going to go after somebody, other than Yusniel Diaz. Dustin May's name got thrown around a little bit. Maybe somebody like Mitch White. Again, really good caliber arms. They end up getting Diaz, who has a chance to be a real 5-tool player. I feel like the Dodgers were selling pretty high on Diaz, not just coming off his 2-homer game at the Futures game. But, he's been better this year at AA Tulsa than he's been pretty much at any other level. He's hitting .314 with a .428 OBP and a .905 OPS, showing some good power, a good amount of speed as well. This reminded me a lot of the Yu Darvish trade last year between between the Dodgers and the Rangers, in which the Dodgers, there was the potential that Alex Verdugo could be on the table, maybe somebody like Walker Buehler. They end up letting go of Willie Calhoun, who was at the time one of the best hitters in the PCL. So the Dodgers really know when to sell high on these guys. Diaz put him in that mix with Mountcastle and Hayes. They have some pretty strong right-handed hitting, at least at the top of the system now. But that pitching really needed to come in the form of Dylan Tate, who the Yankees are also kind of selling high on. When he was drafted 4th overall by the Rangers started messing with his mechanics. Things got a little off. He gets traded to the Yankees. The Yankees tell him, just go back to what you were at UC Santa Barbara. His velocity started to come back. It was in the lower 90s. He's starting to show an above-average breaking ball and above-average changeup. Had a really strong season this year at AA Trenton, 3.38 ERA, 75 strikeouts in 82 2/3 innings. Is that, the caliber of a 4th overall pick? Maybe not so much. But, does he become the most exciting pitcher in that O system? Yes. Now, between those two trades, you've got Tate, Carroll, Diaz, Dean Kramer, who was another pitcher I really like, and who I feel like really built himself up in that Dodger system, and Rylan Bannon. Those are 5 new top 20 prospects in the O system. These rankings will be updated later, I think just in the next few weeks by MLB.com and MLB Pipeline. But to add 5 prospects who are now in your top 20 is how a rebuild kind of starts. Is there enough talent here to declare this a full rebuild? No, they're not nearly at the Padres level. They're not nearly at the White Sox level or at the Yankees level before, they graduated Miguel Andujar and Gleyber Torres and all those guys. And I don't know exactly where the Orioles go from here. I mean, Machado was the biggest chip they had in their stack, really. Britton kind of the same way, especially after he got healthy. Do they trade somebody like Dylan Bundy, somebody like Kevin Gausman? Then they're really punting the football down the field. If they do that, really giving up controllable assets and saying we're not going to be competing in the next 2 years. That's how they would really have to kickstart this rebuild. But for the time being, I feel much better about the O system now than I did when we recorded last week.
The trades inside the American League East, we'll toss this in as sort of a foul ball, even though it just happened today. The Orioles and the Yankees obviously making a deal. The Tampa Bay Rays have acquired prospect Jalen Beeks from the Boston Red Sox in exchange for Nathan Eovaldi. The lefty Beeks so far this season in the International League, second with a 1.09 whip, 15th ranked prospect in the Boston system before the trade. Kind of interesting, these deals going down in the division, but this one not a blockbuster, but the Rays pull in an interesting pitching prospect in a system that is utilizing its prospects and its talent at the major league level in interesting ways, pitching-wise. Yeah,
so Jalen Beeks was one of my favorite pitchers at AAA this year. Not necessarily dominant stuff, and not overbearing at 5'11", but he was leading all of AAA with a 33% strikeout rate, and also was the leader in FIP. So he was ticking all the boxes. He just hadn't quite shown it in the majors yet. He had a 12.79 ERA in the 2 times the Red Sox called him up. But you add him to that Rays mix, and again, like we were saying at the top of the show, for the Red Sox, this is getting 2 months of Nathan Eovaldi, but they're letting go of a guy who they kept wanting to crack the rotation. I mean, Eovaldi is essentially taking the spot that they wanted Beeks to take, and that hasn't happened yet. Beeks has really improved his cutter the last couple of years. That's what's leading to the strikeouts at the AAA level. Is that going to translate into the majors? We don't know yet. But worst comes to worst, he could be a long man reliever, and Tampa Bay is one of the most experimental teams right now, if not the most experimental team, when it comes to utilizing pitchers for multiple innings out of the pen and not necessarily sticking to a traditional 1 through 5 starter role. So I'll be really interested to see how they use him. It sounds like they're going to bring him straight to the majors, kind of let that figure out. But kind of interesting to see. You said before you don't really see mutually beneficial trades anymore. I feel like this could be one. The Red Sox are trying to push for a World Series. They have baseball's best record right now. They need as many hands on deck as they can get. They can't really carry Beeks and kind of hope for the best. The Rays can do that. So I think both sides kind of get something that they needed here.
We continue along the trade deadline trail, and we've got Strike 2 this week, which also involves a deal. The San Diego Padres continue to stock up on prospect talent. They now own a full 10% of the top 100 prospects in baseball. Contracts for those guys now under the control of the San Diego Padres organization, as they sent Brad Hand and Adam Simber to Cleveland in exchange for the 15th ranked overall prospect in all baseball, Francisco Mejia, the catcher formerly of the Cleveland organization. And that system right now is as loaded as we have seen a system. I mean, you think about what the Astros built, what the Cubs built, what the Royals built. The Padres kind of feel like they're on that track right now. What does that trade mean for both the Padres and for Francisco Mejia? And do you think Cleveland overpaid at all to get those guys, Sam?
Well, that's the thing, is that what are the Indians trying to be right now? The Indians are 2 years removed at this point from playing in a World Series, being 1 win away from a World Series. And what is their biggest weakness? It's in the bullpen. They're pretty strong elsewhere. They have some question marks in the outfield. I get that. But I think at the time of the trade, they had the second worst bullpen ERA in baseball. So they pick up Brad Hand, an established all-star closer. They pick up Adam Simber, who's kind of got a funky sidearm delivery, but has been pretty effective. And it wouldn't become a free agent at this point until 2024. And it was like I was saying earlier. You make trades for these guys, it's got to hurt. It's going to hurt. And the Padres put Brad Hand on the market, it was pretty well established that they were willing to let go of him, despite the fact that he too is basically under team control until 2021. But the fact that they were able to get a top 20 overall prospect back for 2 relievers is pretty astonishing. What does he add to the Padres system? Well, he adds a catching prospect that they didn't really have. The Indians were trying to play him all around. They got him time at third base during the fall league last year. They got him time in the outfield this time with AAA Columbus. I would like to see him stick behind the plate. Yes, he has some question marks about his receiving, but the arm is pretty well elite. You pair him up with Austin Hedges, that's an incredible catching tandem. Pretty much the way the game is right now anyways is that you rely on catching tandems. Austin Hedges is a very, very good defensive catcher. Some questions about the bat. Francisco Mejia is a very, very good hitting catcher. Some questions about the glove. Put those two together, they'll be pretty much set for the long-term future there in San Diego. Do I feel like Cleveland overpaid? A little bit. I mean, I would have loved to have seen what the negotiations were. Like I said, Mejia didn't really have a place in Cleveland. Yan Gomez is really taken over there behind the plate. And, with the question marks that he did have because of his glove, they didn't seem really willing to stick him there. I don't think he's necessarily a future outfielder. You can make it work because the bat's going to play pretty much anywhere, but I would really like to see him stick behind the plate. In a way, Mejia was kind of a spare part in a way, but to give up, to give up somebody of his caliber, I would have liked to seen somebody a little bit more than just controllable relievers, but that's the way the market works right now. Control is kind of king. How long can we keep you? How long can we make you affordable? And we'll make it work from there. Adding Brad Hand, Andrew Miller is going to be healthy pretty soon. Having those 2 guys out of the bullpen is going to be huge, and then Adam Simber potentially, being righty on righty matchups is going to be very big. The Padres get exactly what they wanted. They, like you said, Tyler, have 10 top 100 prospects now, which is insane. It didn't even really hit me until you put it that way, even though it's basic math, that 10% of the MLB.com's top 100 prospects right now are all in the same system. That's absolutely mind-blowing. And, but it goes beyond just that. I mean, look at the amount of these guys that are at AA or higher right now. Fernando Tatis Jr., he's at AA. Mejia is right now at AAA El Paso. Luis Urias is at AAA El Paso. Cal Quantrill's at AA. Chris Paddock just got moved up to AA. Logan Allen probably should be at AAA at this point because he leads the Texas League in ERA. They signed Eric Hosmer because they thought they could turn this around pretty quick. Maybe the first year or 2 is going to be down, but the rest of that contract, they were pretty confident that they could be a contender in the NL West. With where all this talent is right now, pretty close to the majors, wouldn't be surprised to see them have kind of like a similar season to what the Braves or the Phillies are having right now in terms of, the rebuild turning into wins quicker than we think.
This is a crazy time of year for a whole lot of organizations because, like we talked about last week, you kind of have to figure out if you're a buyer or a seller with not a whole lot of time between the All-Star break and the trade deadline. We also already have seen some other trades. The New York Mets shipped out Juris Familia, who has gone to the Oakland Athletics. The A's, with the way they've been winning nonstop as of late, they now look like a team on the rise who is going to be buying somewhat toward the deadline. The Texas Rangers apparently were in conversations with teams about Cole Hamels. That could be a possibility over the next few days. So we will see how these things play out as we get closer and closer to July 31st. And as we look back at July 31st of last year, that brings us to strike 3 for this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. There were a lot of big deals at the trade deadline last year. And Sam, when you look back on 2017's moves at the deadline, who stands out among the guys who have raised their stock the most over the last year? Obviously, there were some huge names that moved organizations. Even just in that one trade, the Cubs and the White Sox, Eloy Jimenez, Dylan Cease, the New York Yankees traded away Dustin Fowler and Jorge Mateo. Wrote a story about Mateo last night, who had 4 hits for AAA Nashville. Jesus Luzardo went from the Nationals to the A's last year. The deals that were made a year ago were guys who seemed like maybe they were kind of far off, and those guys have already pushed the envelope to where you're considering them as maybe even players who could make an impact in 2018. Somebody like Jesus Luzardo, probably unlikely, but the way he's pitched, maybe a possibility. Who over the last year seems like they've really bumped themselves up the most?
Yeah, so that Luzardo trade is really interesting 1 year out, more so than I would say any other is. And, what we were saying before about Cleveland needing relief help, well, Washington was in that seat last year, and they were able to find it in Sean Doolittle and Ryan Madsen. And I think the way those two guys stabilized, the back end of that Washington bullpen last year, there really shouldn't be any complaints. They're still with the Nationals. Sean Doolittle was an all-star. He's going through some injury problems now. But in terms of filling the hole that the Nats needed, that trade looks good. On the other side, at the time, Jesus Luzardo, he was a 2016 third-round pick, had only pitched in the AZL. He'd only pitched in the GCL, not the AZL. He had only made 3 starts in the GCL. People believed in his stuff, but everybody thought it was too far off. He really needed to prove his health. Now he's at AA Midland, and is more than just proving his health. He's looking like the best left-handed pitching prospect in baseball. Are the A's kicking, or are the Nats kicking themselves right now? Probably not too hard, but it must have been a sight to see Luzardo start for the World Team at the Futures game in Nationals Park and think about what could have been. The other one I want to bring up, because I feel like I honestly forgot about this trade until I was looking at the what happened last year at the deadline. Tony Watson went from the Pirates to the Dodgers, which again was just kind of like a bullpen help trade. Who went the other way was O'Neal Cruz, who is somebody we haven't talked too much about, but is having a really, really strong season at Class A West Virginia. He's hitting .289 with an .830 OPS, 11 homers, 10 steals, pretty well-rounded package. What's fascinating about him is that he is a 6'6", some places say he's 6'7", shortstop. Which is crazy, and that never happens in today's game, but all the reports I'm hearing is that he is athletic enough at least to play it at the lower levels, and he's become one of the better prospects in that Pirate system. So for somebody who's just kind of a throw-in, I would say he was a little bit more than throw-in, but who was just traded for a left-handed reliever rental, he's now become a bit of an oddity in today's game, somebody who I'm always checking in on, both offensively and defensively, and a real asset to that Pirates organization. So some of these trades that you might hear coming up in the next few weeks, and you think, oh, that's not much of anything. It was a rental, and no prospects really went the other way. Just wait it out a year. Who knows what we could be saying about some of these guys at this same time, 2019.
So that's 3 strikes for this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast. We're going to have a whole lot more to talk about over the next 6 days. By the time we record next week, the deadline will be behind us. So we'll get to break down everything that happens from now until the 31st. And I'm certain that there will be some things that come along that surprise us, as the official dog of the Show Before the Show podcast says hello, like shaking her collar. The deadline always seems to throw a couple of wrenches in toward, especially those last couple of days. I mean, last year it was like 3 minutes after the deadline passed, and we finally got the Darvish traded tweet from Ken Rosenthal. So we'll see what happens between now and the 31st. But for now, that'll do it for this week's episode, Strike 3 segment. And
coming up, we're going to head to the Baltimore Orioles organization, where we find the 6th-ranked prospect in that system, left-handed pitcher D.L. Hall, who is in the midst of a pretty good first season in the South Atlantic League with the Delmarva Shorebirds. D.L. Hall joins the show coming up next.
Well, joining us this week on the Show Before the Show podcast is number 6 Orioles prospect D.L. Hall, currently in Class A in the South Atlantic League. Not unfortunately pitching today. Delmarva had its games against Hagerstown canceled. But DL, how you doing?
Doing well.
So kind of take us through what this was like. I think you were the scheduled pitcher for today, and then you come in, it's raining, game gets bumped like this. How much does a game like or something like this throw you off as a starting pitcher? How does this affect your routine at least?
Well, I was scheduled to start 2 days ago, and we got rained out that day, and then we got rained out again yesterday, and then we got another one today. So, it's 3 extra days off the day. It's it's a lot different. Trying to stay in the rhythm of trying to continue to pitch how it was, and hopefully it doesn't bother me too bad. But luckily, we were lucky enough to get on the field and throw a little bit, so I could at least go through a little bit of a routine. So it wasn't too bad, and we'll hopefully, continue to stay in my rhythm.
Yeah, and speaking of that rhythm, you are the 2-time defending South Atlantic League Pitcher of the Week. With all these kind of cancellations, how does that kind of throw you off? I mean, when you say you're trying to get back into a rhythm, what kind of rhythm have you established this year? Because this is your first full season of minor league baseball.
I think just later on in the seasons, I feel like it's with every pitcher that you get into a rhythm of everything just flowing well. Your mechanics, your arm, everything's just just kind of starting to fall into place. When it gets to the middle of the season and towards the end, you get tired a little bit, but it's I think it doesn't really hurt you too bad to have that tiredness, because you have you have such a rhythm going with all your just as far as mechanics and the mental part of it. You just get rolling, and that's it's kind of tough, and in the rain delays like this and the rain outs, we it's you have those extra days and you don't really know what to do, but you just try and get out on the field and do as much as you can on the when you're able to get out on the field, and just try and keep yourself composed and keep the mental side strong, and just believe that it's still going to be there when you finally do get to throw again.
Yeah, and speaking of what's made you so well, like you said, so much is kind of clicking into place. But in July right now, through 3 starts, you have a 0.51 ERA. You've struck out 25 batters in 17 2/3 innings. As you've kind of gotten used to minor league baseball and what is usually, pitching once a week and every 5th day and all that, how do you feel like you've grown? How are you a different pitcher now than where you were back in April or even back a year ago from now?
I think the biggest thing is just making this jump to low A from high school ball and then the GCLs and then coming straight here. I think the biggest thing that I've really grown up with this year is just being a pitcher versus a thrower. In high school, and you can kind of just if you throw decently hard, you can just blow it by guys, and I feel like getting into pro ball and especially getting to low A against some really good competition, you really learn how to pitch versus just up there throwing it over the plate. And I think that's something that I've improved on a lot, is just being able to actually just pitch and keep hitters off balance and doing it the right way, and kind of trying to learn the mental side of the game, and it also helps to have a really good defense behind you in low A versus high school.
Yeah, I'm sure. But also in terms of just getting it past guys, like you said, being a pitcher more. How do you feel like your pitches have developed? Because you were kind of a low 90s guy coming out of high school. People have talked up your curveball and your changeup as well. But how do you feel like your pitches have kind of taken shape? As you've gotten that taste of full season ball?
I think my fastball command, especially later on in the year, especially like this past month and a half or so, my fastball command has really picked up, and I think that just goes hand in hand with the rhythm, getting in the rhythm of your body, just being all together and flowing. So my fastball command has picked up a little bit, and I hope to continue to improve on that. And my curveball was one of my best pitches, and I kind of lost it when I came to pro ball. Don't really know why, if it was the seams on the ball or what, but I here lately I've started to really get my breaking stuff back, and I think that's been huge for me. And I didn't throw a lot of changeups in high school, but now my changeup is one of my favorite pitches, especially against right-handed batters, and I think that's also been huge for me. But just getting in the rhythm of being able to throw my curveball and slider again has helped me out a lot as well.
And you mentioned your time in the GCL before. Wasn't exactly a memorable time for you. coming out of coming out of high school ball, your first taste of pro ball. You made 5 starts last year, walked 10 batters in 10 1/3 innings. Like you said, maybe the ball was a little different, but what did that do for you going into that off season? Knowing, getting that little taste of humble pie and realizing there were some things that weren't going to work from high school ball to the pros.
Yeah, it's definitely something I feel like everybody goes through. Coming from even college to pro ball or high school to pro ball, everybody that when you get your feet wet, you figure out a lot about yourself and you figure out a lot about pro ball as well. Just realizing that it's not going to be easy. You gotta you really gotta work for it. But I think I think it was huge. I wouldn't take it back for anything to be able to have that, because you go back and you look at that and in the off season, I'm thinking, wow, is that what I want to do again next year? And it really just pushes you to get better and stronger and everything like that. So I think it was a big part of my my steps to getting better. So I really think it was helpful.
And you have been a professional pitcher now for like 13 months, I think, officially. What has been the most surprising aspect of minor league baseball, of being a pro, of going through an off season, whatever? What has surprised you the most that you wish you had known when you were first drafted?
I think one of the best things maybe not the best things of minor league, I think one of the biggest surprises is the bus rides, for sure. I'd always heard stories of how bad it was, but these the Sally League bus rides from Maryland, they're not too fun. So that's probably one of the the biggest changes is 13-hour bus rides and things like that. But other than that, I mean, as far as on the field, it's a huge surprise. It was not really a surprise. I expected it, but it's a huge change. Is just how good everyone is on the field. Just seeing 1 through 9 in the lineup be really good players.
Yeah, well, those bus rides aren't going to get any easier as you get closer to like the Eastern League and you're going from Portland, Maine down to Bowie, Maryland. I'll tell you that much. But
yeah.
But also, one reason I wanted to bring you on the show this week is obviously it's a big week for the Orioles system. They traded Manny Machado last week. They bring in a bunch of prospects. Traded Zach Britton last night. They bring in a bunch of prospects from the Yankees. What kind of trickle-down effect does that kind of have on you guys at the lower levels? How much are you guys talking about how the organization is trying to improve the farm system right now, and how that kind of affects all of your individual chances, as you move up within a system that is trying to rebuild right now?
I think it's, in my opinion, I try not to, from my own personal, standpoint, I try not to worry about it too much. I'm sure guys talk about it, that we have gotten all these prospects and things like that. And there's always the thought in the back of your head, like, wow, we got another left-handed pitcher, that could hurt me. And I'm sure, that goes through everyone's head. But I feel like, our teammates and things, we've gotten a lot of AA and AAA guys in those trades. But I feel like it's something that, it's in the back of your mind, but it's not really something that you need to worry about. I think you focus on your development and getting better, and things will fall into place. And I truly believe that, that's the case. If you just focus on yourself and yourself getting better, then, everything will go the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you feel like is the biggest thing you need to do to kind of place yourself, firmly? I mean, obviously they invested money in you. They invested a first-round pick in you last year. They obviously believe a lot in you, and the results bear that as well. But what do you feel like you need to do here in the last couple months, the last couple starts, to really like solidify yourself and be prepared to make an even bigger jump in 2019? I think what would be huge for me is just to keep the ball rolling. Just keep trying to continue to get better each and every start off of what I've been doing the past couple starts. Just continue to work on things and
and try to get even better and better every start until the end of the year and just finish out strong. I think the finish of this season, the last couple of starts will be the biggest ones of the year as far as, kind of putting my name out there, trying to set it in stone for coming up next year. I think the last few, just how I finish is going to be the biggest part. So just trying to keep it strong and keep it rolling for these last couple of starts will be the biggest part.
Yeah, and as part of what you've done recently in terms of getting it rolling to where you are is the strikeout numbers have gone up pretty incredibly the last couple of starts. You struck out 25 batters over your last three outings combined, but your last one you struck out 10 in 6 innings. I know that feels a while ago now. That was July 16th, so that was 9 days ago. But has that sort of been a goal for you this year? And with everything we talked about how your pitches have developed, how much are you aiming to kind of increase your strikeout numbers as you get more comfortable in the Sally League?
Believe it or not, it wasn't really a goal from, for myself to increase the strikeout numbers. I actually, me and my pitching coach, my biggest thing after, the first couple months of the season, they kind of just left me alone, let me pitch. I was getting later in counts and things like that. And I finally started to realize, I just got to trust my stuff, and I think that's what's really changed my last few outings is I've just been trusting my stuff and just throwing to the glove and not giving the hitters too much credit. And a big thing that me and my pitching coach talked about was just 4 pitches or less to each batter, and then you're trying to work it down to 3 pitches or less. And if you focus on that and just throwing to the glove and trying to get those outs, then the strikeouts will come. And I've really seen that actually happen in my last few starts, just trying to throw to the glove, not trying to overpower anybody, and just letting my stuff do the work, and it's helped me out a lot in increasing my strikeouts.
Yeah, and one thing they've done with you too recently is started to let you go deeper into games. Like I said, you went 6 innings last time, you went 6 innings before that. There were times going back in April, they were only letting you go 2-3 innings at a time. Obviously that's part of the plan coming into this being your first full season, but how did they kind of explain that to you coming in, that listen, we're going to take it really easy with you in the beginning and we'll kind of let you build up to this? What was the Orioles kind of plan that they discussed with you back in the spring coming into the season?
Well, they kind of told me from the get-go that once they told me that I was starting with a full season team, they said, it's a long season. We're not gonna go out there and burn you out in your first year. We're gonna put you on an innings limit. They told me, that. They said, you have a set amount of innings, and we're gonna spread you out throughout the year. We're gonna spread those innings out just for the full season and try and save you so that you can throw the whole season and not get cut short throughout the season. So, they told me from the very beginning that my first couple outings would be three innings. And then they said, you'll work into 4 and 5 innings and sometimes 6. And then, it'll just kind of go from there. And I think now that I'm getting later in the season, it'll go back to, just kind of trickling in a 5-inning start maybe. And then most of the other times being a 3 or 4 inning start.
Yeah, and you mentioned that they said there would be an innings limit for you. You're at 66 1/3 right now. Did they share with you any specific number before the season started?
Yeah, they're trying to keep me, at 100 innings. That's kind of that's their plan for me, is to keep me at 100 innings.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that seems reachable, and with about 6 weeks left here to go. Just one to leave you on kind of deal. Like we mentioned before, with the way the Orioles are kind of rebuilding this week, and I know you said you're not too worried about your place in it, but what kind of excitement does come from being a younger player, knowing that this team is starting to really heavily invest in its future, and they expect you, or they hope you could be a big part of that future 2-3 years down the line as Baltimore continues to add young talent to the system?
I think it's huge. I'm super excited about it. It's definitely exciting to see that, that they are trying to rebuild and get some younger talent in there. I think it's going to be, huge for them. And, I truly believe and trust in the organization that they're going to do whatever it takes to get the big league team back rolling again. And I think it's awesome that they're trying to get the young talent in there. So hopefully that that kind of circulates through the whole minor league system, and we start to get some guys rolling and get the O's team back on top.
Yeah, and one cool thing about the Orioles system that is really unique to it is that Delmarva, Frederick, Bowie, even Aberdeen, which you skipped over, but Norfolk, all the stops are within the Baltimore area. They're all pretty close by. What have you kind of learned about, Maryland life and something that you're going to have to keep carrying with you every stop the rest of the way?
I think one of the biggest things is probably just like crab cake.
Had you had one before this year, or did it take some time?
Yeah, I have. I enjoy them. I actually like them a lot. So I think that's one thing that I'll be eating for a little while, hopefully.
Well, there you go. That's one way to win over Baltimore fans for sure. Well, this has been D.L. Hall, 19-year-old left-hander in the Orioles system, really enjoying a solid first year in the South Atlantic League. We'll be looking forward to seeing what you can do the rest of the way in 2018 and beyond. Thanks so much for joining us, D.L.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you for having me. Thank you. God bless.
Benjamin Hill back from the latest road trip in which you got to see the widest swath of minor league baseball environments, I think, imaginable. Ben, howdy. How was the rest of the trip?
Hey, guys. It was good. It's strange to be back in New York. I still feel kind of loopy, but Sam and I are in this gigantic conference room.
Yeah, which feels like where villains gather to discuss their evil plans and all that kind of stuff.
It's like with a big boardroom table, one of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, there are dozens of chairs here.
Yeah, we could fit in
and there are just two of us, obviously.
There are 2 flat screen TVs next to each other.
Wow.
With a camera underneath them.
Yeah. We're being monitored as we speak. Right now.
Oh, yeah, undoubtedly.
We are being judged for having rented out this room for the next hour, but that's fine.
What are those two needed for? What do they need this gigantic room for? Well, Ben is back. Just 1 week ago, Ben was taking in a game at BB&T Ballpark in Charlotte, which is one of the real gems of minor league baseball. And then a few nights later was in the home of the Bristol Pirates in the Appalachian League, and they kind of bill themselves as being baseball how it should be, the roots of the game, and a very basic display of baseball in an old school ballpark in a small town. You really got to go from kind of the biggest big league feel to the smallest small time old school minor league baseball feel over the span of like 4 days. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, last week, as you mentioned, I talked to you from a hotel room in Charlotte. So this is a trip that we're talking about started back on Friday, July 13th, with Florida Fire Frogs, and then from there, it's in Kissimmee, and then from there to Daytona for the Tortugas, then the Jumbo Shrimp, then the new ballpark in Augusta, and then Charlotte, and then bam, that's the last time I talked to you. And then from there, saw the Charlotte Knights game. Asheville, they suited up as the Hippies on Thursday night. Went from there back to the Appy League and saw a game in Johnson City, and then finally in Bristol. So this trip was the biggest one of the year, and a lot of unique baseball environments. And yeah, Tyler, as you mentioned, to go from a place like Charlotte, which is almost a major league market in terms of the size of the city, and end in Bristol, Virginia, where they don't have a full-time employee. And you're playing on a field that's kind of like almost reminds you of American Legion or a traveling tournament type of field, and not in a bad way, just in how down home it is. This is minor league baseball, and this is why I keep doing it, because there's so many different places to explore.
And so one of the stops you made, like you said, was in Asheville. You were there for, was it Hippies Night? Or what was the official designation?
Yeah, I mean, a Hippies Night. They played as the Hippies. They're usually the tourists, but on this Thursday evening, they wore tie-dye uniforms, and they were called the Hippies. The Hippies name goes back to I think last season or maybe 2 seasons ago. There was some Twitter banter between Asheville and Greenville, and some insults being thrown back and forth, and Greenville insulted or thought they were insulting Asheville on Twitter by calling them the Hippies, and then Asheville just adopted the name. So they're literally now suiting up as an alternate identity that stemmed through a Twitter beef with a South Atlantic League rival. So there you go in minor league baseball. But it was a good night to be at the ballpark. in addition to the tie-dye uniforms, it was Thirsty Thursday, and as I'm sure I've mentioned on this show before, right. The tourists are the originators of Thirsty Thursday. So always cool to see Thirsty Thursday in its purest form.
What is Thirsty Thursday in its purest form?
Well, I guess in this case, I just mean the team that originated it. But I think in its purest form, it is, $1 beer in small cups, directly out of kegs that are purchased just for, Thirsty Thursday at a separate kiosk or a separate stand on a card table somewhere down the left field line or whatever have you. I think purity can come in many forms.
No, it can. No, that's fine. I just wanted to know how you defined it. That's all.
Yeah. So that was Thursday night, and it was a lot of fun in Nashville. One of the things I did in Nashville this year, which I should have done last time, I just didn't think of it, is, this is a ballpark, McCormick Field, that is, kind of hollowed out of a very woodsy area with a lot of vegetation and elevation around it. And there is a youth soccer field, lacrosse field, directly behind the ballpark in a public city park. So I went up there during the game and went up onto the bleachers in this youth lacrosse field. There's a lacrosse game going on, but if you climb to the top of the bleachers at this field, which overlooks McCormick Field, you can get this incredible view of the game going on, this minor league baseball game from this elevated vantage point, and it's just such a cool place to watch a game. I also was reminded of the fact that the vegetation overlooking the outfield in McCormick Field, there's a very steep hill and it gets pretty wild and woolly. The team actually hired a company that specializes in, quote, goatscaping to clean the vegetation. You literally bring a company that has goats who come and eat away the vegetation because that's like the only way to clean it or to really clear it out. So if you ever go to McCormick Field, just remember they hired goatscapers.
That's pretty impressive. I would not even, in 2018 society, I wouldn't even think that there was somebody still thinking, the best way to do this, just get a whole bunch of goats. It's not, there's no machines, nothing. It's all goats.
Yeah, and I love that. As high tech as we get, as advanced, as virtual, sometimes there are jobs that you just have to go back to your roots as an agrarian society and just get some goats.
That's pretty cool. Johnson City and Bristol, two Appy League stops, Ben, which are very different feels from especially what you saw in Charlotte, but even some of the other trips this season, Jacksonville and Fort Wayne and some of these other ballparks that have really kind of put themselves on the map in minor league baseball. What was it like touring through a couple of rookie-level Appy League stops? Well,
I did I did a trip 2 years ago that was the entirety of the Appy League,
right.
All 10 teams. And so these stops this time around was because Johnson City was rained out when I went 2 years ago, and I actually stayed in Johnson City for for the first 5 nights of the trip because the teams around that division are so clustered together. So there was the irony of spending all this time in Johnson City and not seeing a game. So once I made it back to the region, I said, okay, Johnson City rain out redemption. That's like all the ballparks in the Appy League, it's a small environment. I think that front office, General Manager Zach Clark, who had been the AGM 2 years ago, when I was there, I think he and the front office are doing creative things in an Appy League environment, trying to get rid of bleacher seating, trying to create group areas, trying to, as much as possible, even within a small environment, create areas to move around and make it just a place where you're not just sitting on decades old bleachers because, the name of the game in minor league baseball has changed. So they have Jenga and cornhole set up, down the left field line, a perch group area. They tweaked the logo the last couple of years. So there's a lot of energy in Johnson City that is cool to see. And the town itself as well. I think the proactive way in which the ball club is being run is also a reflection of the proactive way that Johnson City's downtown is developing. It's a really cool place to go if you ever get the chance to check it out. And then the trip was going to end there, but then I ended up going to Bristol on Saturday night twofold. Dale Murphy was there, and when you have the chance to talk to Dale Murphy, why not? I grew up a Phillies fan. But, he played for the Phillies in the 90s, and I was a fan of him in the early 90s. And, just an icon of 80s baseball and a nice guy. So you can check my Twitter. I have some stuff with Dale, and I'll probably have a lot more from him in the very near future. And also Governor Ralph Northam was there as part of his summer of baseball. He's visiting all 9 minor league teams in the state of Virginia. So I got a chance to talk to him as well. And he and the Speaker of the House, Kurt Cox, were there throwing out first pitches, making friendly wagers. But I do think that is a really cool thing. For a politician to do, especially one who's representing an entire state, is, go to all the ballparks in your state. Virginia is a particularly fertile place for that, but I do think it's a great way to see the state, interact with the people of the state, and it's kind of just an extension of what I've always been saying about what I do with my job is, exploring America through minor league baseball, or explore your state through minor league baseball. And, each place is a reflection of the community in which it operates. So go for it. That's a thumbs up to Governor Ralph Northam for going to see all these different ballparks. And there he was in Bristol on Saturday night alongside Dale Murphy. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah, and how do you feel like Bristol handled it? Because like you said, this is a club that doesn't have a full-time employee. Now all of a sudden they're bringing the governor of their state in. And not to put Dale Murphy on the same level, but like they're 2 big promotions in one night, and it's a Saturday night, lots going on. What are the kind of inner workings on a night like that when they don't have, these bigger front offices? Yeah,
I mean, it was a crazy night in Bristol. I got there, about 3 hours before the game started, and there were already fans lined up to see Dale Murphy. That had been done as part of a partnership with Toyota of Kingsport, who I think sponsored the event and brought Dale Murphy to the ballpark. So my contact in terms of trying to interview Dale Murphy was actually a guy who worked for the car dealership. It's just kind of how they set it up. But but they know what they're doing, even though they don't have full-time employees. They've, dedicated volunteers have been running the show there for quite some time. And then the governor, there was a rain delay and the game didn't start till about after 8. The governor and his entourage, and he did have an entourage, didn't come until a little after 7. Then there's really no external facility at this ballpark except the press box and a little auxiliary room, attached to the press box. And it kind of reminds you of like a camp, being a camp and being in a cabin at a camp is the kind of environment you have at Bristol. So there were about 25 people in this room just off to the press box, including the governor, the Speaker of the House, Dale Murphy, these Toyota Kingsport high rollers, various part-time employees with the Bristol Pirates, other members of the media, et cetera, all in this cramped, hot room that, again, basically reminds you of a camp cabin. So it was kind of a funny thing to see, but the weather cleared up. All the first pitches got thrown, good crowd in attendance, and then the game went extra innings and past midnight, and what a long day in minor league baseball, Appalachian League style.
Ben, what's up next on what do you have left on the road trip tickets this year?
August will be, just more smaller trips close to, where I'm based here in New York City. Going to actually hit the 2 New York City teams in a matter of weeks. I got Brooklyn Cyclones on the schedule August 8th, the Staten Island Yankees August 10th. Then the following week, I'm going to go to Williamsport for a major league game, see the Little League Classic between the Mets and the Phillies, but, played at an historic minor league ballpark. Also throw in the State College Spikes into that weekend itinerary. I believe that's August 19th and 20th. And then going to see the Aberdeen Steam Crabs on August 24th. So 3 mini trips throughout August. And, of course, I got a lot more to write from this recent jaunt through the Southeast. I've just got so much to write, I don't even know where to begin. So my strategy is to not do anything, and it's working really well.
And it'll just magically happen.
Yeah. Yeah, but it'll all work out. Still getting my bearings after such a long time on the road, but it's good to be back in this gigantic conference room next to my friend Sam Dykstra, who is sitting to my left.
Okay.
Yes, left. Yeah. And wearing a Vermont Maple Kings cap.
Yeah. Sam and I were texting about this, or I guess messaging on Instagram about this, because Sam now has a Greenbow Biscuits hat. And has the Maple Kings hat, so he's got, as he put it on Instagram, like 2/3 of a full breakfast now. And Sam and I were saying it's kind of surprising that no team has done anything coffee related for any of the food. Like, you would think Tacoma, what are you doing out there? You're like right next door to Seattle. Do something coffee related.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you can see some coffee logos with the eyes bugging right out of a mug or whatever the case may be.
The idea we came up with was...
You came up with it because it was too good of I don't want to take any credit for it. It was good.
Oh, I didn't know if you came up with the name, but I came up with the logo. Was the Roasters, the Tacoma Roasters. And then it's a rooster with a mug. Like, you can see it so clearly in your brain now. Like, all of you at home know exactly what I'm thinking about.
Dressed up as like a 1950s diner waiter.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And, it's got some
Tacoma.
the patterns on it, like maybe wearing an apron, something like that. So many possibilities here.
You walk in and you order that cup of coffee and he says, "What's got you down?" One of those things. One of those things.
What
That's
kind of diner experiences have you had?
I don't know why he would have that accent in Tacoma, Washington. But now you have our idea, Tacoma. We just require hats. That's all we require on this podcast.
Right.
That's it.
Ben,
what else is up on the site? What else is coming up to the site?
Well, there's the road stories that I mentioned. Got stuff up already from Jacksonville. I got stuff up from Charlotte about their clubby who got his head shaved for to benefit versus cancer. Got a story on the Virginia governor coming soon. Already have a story written about from last week, about the Daytona Tortugas Big Lebowski promotion, Big Shelbowski. So I'm just jumping back and forth between the past and the present and the future, talking about things I've written, things that I will write. So there is a lot more to come. And once I get a little bit of time to clear my head, I'm also going to look at just upcoming promos in the world at large, because I don't want to sleep too much on that. There's been a lot of great things announced, and we'll be back very soon to talk about things not just related to my own personal experiences, but about this wide-ranging industry in general.
It is indeed a very widespread one. Benjamin Hill's on Twitter. He is at Ben's Biz. The blog is bensbiz.mlblogs.com. And thanks, Ben. Enjoy tackling all the remaining stuff, road trip categorizing-wise, I guess. There's so many different things that when you have all of these still in front of you, I would imagine there's like things you have coming up on trips that you want to cover that maybe you've already done in past trips. Like, do you reserve certain topics, like food-wise? Every ballpark obviously has its own signature food, but like you can't write about that at every single park. Do you kind of pick out when you have one on the docket, like, all right, I'm going to reserve X for when I'm in Brooklyn, or this for when I'm at, wherever, Williamsport?
A little bit. I think, with food, I just try to find whatever's unique to that ballpark and recruit the designated eater. But in general, sometimes there is saying like, okay, this topic, I need to reserve it for this place. But I think in general, I'm okay with a little overlap as long as I can highlight what makes it unique to that park, whether be it food or otherwise. And if it's a little repetitive, I write so much, hopefully, people won't even realize because, they might not have read the other thing I wrote. I think I used to worry more about, people aren't going to like this article because I wrote this article. And then you realize, like, most people aren't reading everything you write, so you just pretend you have a new audience every time you write something and go from there. But that's been my strategy, at least.
That works. Enjoy, Ben. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Wrapping up our last pre-trade deadline episode of the Show Before the Show podcast in 2018, and another full-packed weekend on MILB.TV. Sam, what are you watching this weekend?
Yeah, so the Bowie Baysox, who we talked about earlier, added Yusniel Diaz, already have Ryan Mountcastle, so that's going to be a really fun lineup. They'll be traveling to the Harrisburg Senators this weekend, who also have another futures gamer in Carter Keyboom. So that should be a pretty fun matchup in terms of, infielders, outfielders, no matter what. There's going to be a pretty solid hitting prospect on the field this weekend when Bowie travels to Harrisburg. So I'll be watching that, just see how Diaz looks in a, Orioles uniform, I guess, going into what will be his second week in the system. Should be a lot of fun. What are you keeping your eye on, Tyler?
Well, it's not the best of MILB.TV feeds, but in Las Vegas coming up this weekend, the AAA Memphis Redbirds will be there, and Tyler O'Neill, the second-ranked prospect in the St. Louis Cardinals organization, has been crushing the ball nonstop as of late. He had his 14th multi-homer game of the season last night on Tuesday night of this week. He had 3 homers on Monday. He has just been obliterating things all over the park. So Las Vegas sometimes can be a little bit tricky watch, but Tyler O'Neill is definitely worth flipping it on and watching some late night baseball. So that is a 9:05 start time, actually in a wraparound series from Friday through Monday. for the Redbirds on the road in Las Vegas. You can catch that at MILB.TV as well. And with that, we'll wrap things up on this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast. Keep it locked on MILB.com. We'll have everything from now until the trade deadline. We'll run you through all the biggest deals and the most impactful stuff. We've got our trade tracker there and all that. And we'll be here to break it all down next week. And until then, enjoy maybe the last week of watching some prospects in certain locations. And we'll talk to you next week to tell you all about it when we return for episode 171 of the Show Before the Show from MILB.com.